Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic, and today's comic is Superman, issue number 262, dated March 1973. I would say this actually was a fun read. It was a very fun read. It's very much in the spirit of the Silver Age, but it was a fun Silver Age issue here. There is some dickery from Superman. There is some dickery from Clark Kent. And there is some dickery from the writer himself, Elliot Maggin. Take a look at before I get into the story, take a look at the cover. I'm not quite sure whether it's a Nick Cardy cover or not. It doesn't really look like it. So my guess is probably Curt Swan, at the very least, probably designed the cover. Superman, he's his own 9/11 here, as he's karate chopping this large building tower in half, and he's informing us, "I've got to destroy this building. My life depends on it." Probably a good reason to do that. You know, when your own life is on the line, who cares about property damage, particularly since it's not his building. It's kind of odd seeing, like, there's nothing else around this structure other than this building. I will say one thing, and it kind of bleeds into the interiors, is that while I thought the art was pretty good, it was really good actually, and I thought the layouts were interesting. At least Kurt seemed to be a little more inspired by this story, because he did do some clever layouts, but the coloring both on the cover and inside the story is just terrible. I mean, I know it's bad because things that were drawn correctly look like something else, and it wasn't because of the art, it was because of the coloring. So I'm going to get into it, and we're going to take a look. There's an A story and a B story. We'll take a look at the A story, and it's called "The Skyscraper That Screamed for His Life." And we'll take a look at the creative team. I think the creative team for both the A story and the B story is the same. I had mentioned the writer is Elliot Maggin. He was not a dick in this story. It's the next story where he's a dick. The art is by Curt Swan and Murphy Anderson. Those are two classic Superman artists. Whenever I say the name Curt Swan, I think I default into saying Craig Swan, because as a Mets fan, he was a pitcher on the team. But I got the name right. And it's edited by Jules Schwartz. Okay, so I'm going to go into the story. Basically what's happening is that the person who the story is centered around, it's weird saying protagonist, because obviously Superman's the main protagonist, is a kind of this Elon Musk type character, and his name is Peter Demos, and he apparently rules this huge financial empire. That's why we saw the skyscraper on the cover, because obviously large, tall buildings are associated not only with Superman but also with very rich people. And again, they're kind of leaning here on the Greek tycoon thing, because I know Demos is a Greek name. And again, what's his name? Aristotle Onassis was a huge media figure around this time. So anyway, but Demos is kind of an odd character in that he has a telescope here. So he's very interested in the comings and goings of what's going on. Now, I don't know whether this wealthy CEO industrialist has his Luigi problem, as we would say, because it kind of looks like it. He's worried. He's looking out for Luigi here. But nevertheless, he is actually looking for Clark Kent. And apparently, we'll find out later that Peter Demos has something to tell the world. And because he's rich, he can get the biggest station in Metropolis and their star reporter, Clark Kent, to interview him. So Clark is showing deference here. You know, he's going to Peter. Peter's not going into the news station. And that's kind of like soft power there. So anyway, Clark is walking toward the building, and he's aware that Peter Demos is a super rich guy, super important guy. He's a guy who could stand toe to toe with Superman, not financially, but from a status point of view. Because you know all the Jesus-like powers that Superman has. Hey, this guy has the other guy. He has money. He has money. So you know, you can buy that status. So anyway, Clark's worried about being late for the interview because Peter Demos is a man who has a reputation of being very curt. He's very tight with his time, and he doesn't wait for anyone. Demos is looking from his balcony here, and he notices Clark Kent. So he figures, okay, it's good. This guy's on time. He's showing the proper respect. However, as Demos is kind of leaning a little bit over the balcony here, we suddenly see a chair from his office suddenly slide and head directly toward him. Demos doesn't seem that surprised by that. He's a little taken back by what's going on now, but the idea of this chair just simply by itself moving toward him, he seems kind of familiar with events like this. And then the chair kicks Demos right in the rear, but because he's so close to the edge of the balcony, he actually goes over it. And this is where some of the bad coloring in this story comes in. One, they're using purple to designate the streets and the building in the foreground. And it really confused me as to what was going on here, because it looked like Demos actually was bumped into another chair. And this is not because of the art, this is because of the coloring. So this is something that's continuous in this. And just the suit, the colors of the suit of Demos looks terrible. The blues and the greens are just terrible in this issue. So anyway, Demos is he's going down because he's been kind of thrown off this building here. He looks a little like Superman here, but in his civilian clothing. However, he doesn't fly like Superman, so he's calling out for help. Now, there are spectators watching this. So, hey, you know what? Maybe in the DC universe, gravity is a little slower than it is here. But nevertheless, people are seeing this guy falling, including Clark Kent. Now, as the onlookers here are kind of like mesmerized by this sight, Clark takes advantage of the crowd being distracted, and he runs into a revolving door, and he basically does the Superman 1978 move. And by the way, rest in peace, Gene Hackman. We got the details to his death, and it was quite tragic. So anyway, Superman flies out of the revolving door, but instead of meeting Lois Lane, he comes across Demos here. So he captures Demos just as he's falling. So Demos is going to be okay. Superman, he's making kind of a quip here. And again, this is something DC wanted to kind of compete with Marvel. On one hand, DC kind of knew that their characters were a little stiff and a little boring. But on the other hand, they really could not change who they were and how they approached comics. So you kind of got these strange little moments where Superman's trying to be kind of like Spider-Man type quips or wisecracking. He tells Demos, hey, next time use your private elevator. And Demos is saying, hey, I fell. So again, this is, and some fans did write about this. They didn't really like these quips because they seem very half-hearted. So anyway, Superman takes Demos back to his balcony. And, Deimos is not one for small talk, so he's ready for the interview. So Superman just flies off. Also, the fact that as Clark Kent, Superman does have to meet this guy in a moment. So anyway, Superman, he flies back down to the revolving door, and then when he enters the lobby, he's suddenly Clark Kent with all his equipment here. Clark does have some interesting equipment in this issue. He's speaking to the doorman here as he's heading toward the elevator bank. And suddenly the building starts shaking. And then there's kind of this loud screech. It's really quite a jolt here because not only are the people feeling it, but you see the furniture and the offices are really kind of just shaking quite noticeably, I should say. The gummies are starting to kick in. And then it stops, and Clark is asking the doorman, what was that? And the doorman says, that's the screaming spooky. All right, but I can't talk about it. Now, there's this strange, kind of almost supernatural phenomenon going on in this building, but Deimos has enough cash in his pocket to keep this quiet. So, anyway, Clark goes up the elevator, and here he's greeted by Deimos in his penthouse apartment. Once again, the art is really good, but the colors are just terrible here. And Deimos is informing Clark, hey, I have some things to say, and I want to say it. And I want to say it to a large TV audience. This is kind of mind-blowing here. It's kind of like the neighborhood loudmouth crank, and except this guy has access to the actual media. This is what separates, say, a guy like Elon Musk, who is quite the crank, and the guy at the end of the bar in terms of getting their presence noticed, even though they both have the same harebrained ideas. So anyway, this guy is demanding an audience. He has things to say, and people must hear this. And then Deimos goes into his childhood. It does stay here, he was born in Greece. Again, they're falling on the Greek tycoon trope here. And his father was a fisherman, and they grew up very poor, which is understandable. Greece is not the richest country in Europe. So anyway, the father really pushed the son to study, to make something of himself. He said, listen, if you don't do well in school, you're going to end up like me, a fisherman. His father's a decent guy, by the way, but he wants more for his son. He wants his son to be a decent guy and to have some money in his pocket. So then it turns out that Deimos, his father had died, but he had won a scholarship, a UNICEF grant to study at Hudson University in the States. So this guy was given a grant. Now, he worked hard in school, seems like a decent guy, did all the right things, but his big opportunity to become a millionaire, it started with a government handout. So when people kind of knock government handouts, hey, those things can blossom. So anyway, it turns out that Deimos obviously took this grant, this UNICEF grant. So DC is specifically pointing out this is the organization. UNICEF is a part of the UN. And but the thing is that the scholarship, it wasn't a complete free ride because he had to have a place of residency. He had to feed himself. He had to clothe himself. And it turned out that he was sort of living in the same squalor he was in Greece as a boy during his studies. But this kind of fortified him. And then he got his opportunity to get into the business world. And apparently, about 10 years had passed. So again, DC liked to keep their characters around 29, 30. So it turns out that Deimos is a guy who kind of rose up the financial ladder. But he did so largely on merit, at least according to this story. Now, merit does count, but merit isn't everything. You know, you look at Don and Eric, you can tell you merit doesn't mean much. So anyway, we see this scene here where Clark is kind of listening to this story. He's recording it, and he's also sort of the cameraman here, because apparently there's a robotic TV camera that Clark had brought with him. So again, this is something kind of like from the future here. This kind of probably has, similar to kind of the robot in Rocky IV, if you remember Paulie's robot, a little smaller though. So anyway, Demos is here waiting, and he's showing Clark into a particular room that he wants him to see. And the thing is that within this huge, luxurious penthouse, there's this one room that that kind of is reminiscent of the homes that he stayed in as a child. So basically, this is sort of like Demos, kind of like remembering his childhood. And we can see this is stuff that's familiar with him as a boy. Then Demos is giving his personal philosophy. It's kind of like the raise yourself up by your bootstraps, even though it was UNICEF who gave him the bootstraps. Because without that UNICEF grant, you know, he's back there in that fishing village. He's just a little more educated than everyone else. And this is the big announcement that he's making. What he's going to do is he's going to take this building that he's currently working on, or he currently lives in. This is kind of like the Demos Tower. And he's going to turn it into a self-running machine. So he's basically going to AI his building, but in 1973. Good luck there. I think this guy is hiding from Luigi. But nevertheless, this is his plan. And as this conversation's going on, it turns out there's two window cleaners here. And they're up on their scaffolding here. And the building is starting to shake. And it's shaking tremendously, just like it had done earlier. Now, Demos doesn't seem surprised by this event. Not entirely. He's used to the building shaking like this. Because in fact, he's actually telling Clark to ignore it, and it's no big deal. Clark doesn't feel this way. He feels that it's an opportunity for him to become Superman. And he feels like this is a job for Superman. But the thing is that he's able to change in Demos's room, simply because Demos is just so distracted at this moment. And it turns out that we see Clark, as he's changing into Superman, his reflection is in one of these large mirrors. But the mirror shatters, and Demos can only be concerned about the loss in property value. So he missed an opportunity to actually see who Superman was, because he was, crying about his, this little property damage of his. And Superman, Clark has successfully turned to Superman. He tells Demos, "Listen, I have to go." Demos thinks he's talking to Clark, and he turns around and he doesn't see Clark there. But as this is happening, Superman is flying out the building. Okay, take a look at this one ad. It's for again a learning correspondence course. These were very popular because there were a lot of veterans taking advantage of the GI Bill. It says how to put your hands to work making money. And no, not it doesn't. It's not for massages. It's for art. So anyway, we'll go back to the story. We see that there are actually a number of window washers here, and they're on the scaffolding. Two of them actually fall directly off it. The other two crews, at least those guys are holding on. Superman, just like he did in Superman 78, where he grabs Lois and he grabs the helicopter. He does the same with these two men here. And then as he lets them down to the ground, he carves out a piece of the concrete sidewalk here. And he uses that as a platform to get the other two crews of men. So four guys here are being saved at this point. Now, the entire window washing crew, they're on the ground, so Superman doesn't have to worry about those guys anymore. Superman's noticing that all the commotion, the movement, and the disturbances are all happening in this one building. And the surrounding areas are fine. There's no problem there. And we hear a loud screech right here. And the screeching is continuous. Superman, he's trying to figure out what's going on because he's noticing that Deimos is the only one who really isn't surprised by what's going on. Everyone else is kind of semi-familiar with it, at least some of the long-term workers or people who, were just at the building that day like Superman was. But Deimos in particular seems to have extra knowledge about what's going on with the building. Superman, he's taking a look. He's noting that it's coming from the pipes in the walls. Superman is up on his building codes. There was a Superman. This is during the early years when it was like the New Deal Superman in the 40s, where Superman was a super gentrifier, and he destroyed an entire block of tenements that had tenants in them. They had to run for their lives. Superman smashed the buildings with all their personal stuff and saying that, we need to improve this neighborhood. And one of the things we need to improve is we need to have better buildings and we need to have better people in this neighborhood. So Superman, he kind of has a thing for gentrifying. So he's going to notice stuff like pipes and other forms of building infrastructure. Superman is also interested in getting an explanation from Deimos himself. Because again, he wants to know what Deimos knows about this. Then we see one of the offices. The office furniture is actually flying itself out of the window. So all these file cabinets and typewriters and the water cooler, they're all going out the window. Thankfully, not the employees. The women here are a little scared, obviously, but at least they seem to be somewhat safe. Superman is noticing all the debris flying out of the office windows. But, and it looks like the debris actually is being hurled at Superman here. So, so this is a form of attack here. Turn the page, take a look at an ad here for these patches, these groovy patches, as the ad says. Some of them are actually pretty good. You lose the Confederate flag there, though. So going back to the story, again, Superman, he feels Deimos is the one guy who's sort of at the center of the story because he feels that Deimos at least can give him an explanation into what's going on. Because Superman, he does not want a building that is not following code. So anyway, Superman is also talking about losing his temper with Deimos. And he's actually getting a little authoritarian with him, saying, Deimos, I want to talk to you. And Deimos is like, what can I do for you, Superman? So he's a little humbler. And Superman's asking about the strange occurrences in the building. Deimos, oh man, Deimos, this guy flips on a dime because his first word balloon is, me? Nothing, absolutely nothing. And then in the second word balloon, but I guess it's time I told someone, even if I do sound crazy. So this guy has no fortitude. This guy has no fortitude. Um, torture, you don't have to torture this guy. He'll give up everything uh, after after the first question. So anyway, Demos had noticed there were always these kind of strange little occurrences, but there was nothing to indicate that there was a systematic problem. He just kind of noticed that doors would kind of open for themselves, and there were little quirks. And he felt that in some way the building was trying to communicate with him. It sounds a little crazy, and Demos probably thought that explanation was crazy, so he didn't really pursue it too much. But then what happened is the building, the events started becoming more aggressive, particularly toward him. So then Demos is thinking there was some type of intelligence behind what was going on. And so Demos is saying that this building does have some type of life here. Superman, yeah, he's kind of on the line here because he doesn't know whether to believe Demos or not. But there were enough events to make Superman at least give him the benefit of the doubt. Superman wants Demos to evacuate the building immediately. Demos immediately says, "But my employees, my business, I own them both. You're telling me to abandon them? No, I think they should stay and do their best to get some profit for me." So again, I swear, this guy's looking out for Luigi. Superman gives an ultimatum, saying, "You'll empty it now, or I'll carry everyone out myself." So Superman here, he's kind of getting a little testy, a little tested with Demos. Superman, he's like a firm establishment guy, probably kind of corporate pro-business guy, but he's saying, "Listen, I have my limits too. I have to look out for people." And then the building is evacuated here. The screeching gets louder, so it seems like the building wants to make sure these people get an extra scare as they're leaving. But the thing is Demos is not leaving the building. And Superman finds this odd, because why would he stay in this building knowing how dangerous it is? But Superman is also a little suspicious of Demos. And then we see a lot of bad coloring. Again, there's something weird with the purples and blues and the green. They just look horrible in this issue. So anyway, Superman looks at the front of the building. He sees Demos standing there pretty defiantly. And then Demos lets out that primal scream, that ghostly scream, I guess you could say, that the others had been hearing. It's now coming directly from Demos himself. And the dialogue balloon and the art don't really match here, because we're told that Demos has a glint of madness that creeps across his features. But the thing was, honestly, Demos kind of just looks mildly constipated. So I kind of feel like, Kurt dropped the ball here. So that face should look a little, creepier. Superman flies. There's no actual follow-up to that drama going on with Demos. So it appears to be kind of like a small little moment. He was having an episode. Demos says he's fine, just fine. Superman's not sure. Demos wants to get back to the building as quickly as possible, so he walks into traffic, and apparently there's a van coming straight ahead. Demos doesn't see this, so Superman has to kind of swoop in and catch Demos just before he's going to be hit by this truck here. And again, Superman points out, "Hey, this is the second time I saved your life so far." And then Demos is, definitely he changes. Visually he looks the same, however from his word balloons, We can see that there's a different person talking, has a different cadence. He addresses Superman as Kryptonian. You're more trouble than you're worth. And then Deimos, as he's in flight with Superman, he actually turns the tables on Superman. And he grabs Superman and he throws Superman forward here. As Deimos appears to have the power of flight, Superman's surprised by this because he's thinking, hey, you're rich, but you're still a normal guy. And then Deimos, he just suddenly starts accelerating toward the ground. Superman is noticing that, hey, how did he get superpowers suddenly? And he sees Deimos is falling again, so it's kind of like an on-off superpower. Superman, he grabs Deimos just before he's going to hit the pavement. Superman wants answers, but it appears that the whatever intelligence was possessing Deimos is back, because he's back to these kind of alien-like word balloons. And he's also talking about Deimos in the third person. So then Superman, who has Deimos in his arms, not romantically, he turns into kind of the Silver Age alien here. I can't really describe what he looks like. It's definitely not a terribly impressive alien. So anyway, Superman is holding this alien, and the alien attacks Superman in mid-flight. He slams Superman into the building using this ray that's coming from a kind of a growth on his forehead. And it turns out that this is a creature Superman is familiar with. He's never encountered this creature before, but he has heard in his space travels about this particular race. And he's called a Ninkumpa. Ninukpa. I can't pronounce it. But based on the name and the look, I don't think this race was ever seen again. So Superman knows what they do. He says that they're spirit-like creatures, remnants of a dead alien race of sorcerers, who now inhabit man-made objects like buildings and spaceships. So Superman kind of has an idea of who he's against. And this worries him because it's a supernatural power. Superman has problems with magic. That's something that's been kind of established. So he kind of has to fight this sorcerer. So he has to use a lot of tricks, and kind of hoping that maybe his techniques will save the day. So far, the sorcerer is handling Superman fairly well. Okay. Now take a look at this one ad. The top is an in-house ad for Superboy, the 100-page editions. Around this time, again, because they wanted higher-priced items on the newsstand, DC had started printing these 100-page giants. First they started at 50 cents. That didn't last too long because inflation hit us really hard in 1970, 74. 1973, 1974, I should say. I vaguely remember those years. But because of inflation, they went to 60 cents. I know I made my mom buy me those. I always enjoyed them. Even though the promise was worth more than what I actually got, because there were oftentimes reprints from the 1940s with terrible artwork or characters I just didn't care about. Then on the bottom of that, it's a more interesting ad. Apparently it's for novelizations. And the first one is Debbie Preston, teen reporter in The Case of the Gypsy's Warning. And it tells that super Hollywood detective Debbie Preston, as she meets David Cassidy and the Osmonds, I should say, and they solve a mystery. So this is kind of like one of those mystery things, but rather than getting Scooby Doo and the gang, you get like David Cassidy or Donny Osmond to help solve the crime here. I would I would love to read these too. Here's another one: Debbie Preston, teen reporter in The Hollywood Mystery. And this time Debbie is solving a mystery, and helping her is Michael Gray, who was Billy Batson in the Shazam show, I should say, Donny Osmond, and David Cassidy. Kind of like, this is like definitely a girl's fantasy. This is kind of like, I guess, early fandom. I forgot what they call it, fan writing. Then we have one for the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch in The Treasure of Mystery Island. And it says, during a vacation on Mystery Island. Yeah, Mike must have said, yeah, we're going to go to Mystery Island. The Bradys become involved with the ghost of 16th century pirates and their hidden treasures, which are concealed among its many caves on the island. Yeah, that sounds more like an episode of the cartoon. And then we have one, The Brady Bunch in New York. A trip to New York turns into a dangerous adventure. Yeah, 1973 New York. It's going to be kind of a little scary. When Peter turns photographer, Times Square, and the entire Brady family becomes involved with 4 mysterious strangers. There is a lot of realism in this description, even though I don't think it's reflected in the novel itself. Cool. Oh, that'd be great to read those. They were $1.25 and just 50 cents shipping and handling. Anyway, going to go back to the story. We see the alien and Superman. They're facing off. They're elevated in the skies. The alien has the upper hand at this point. And Superman's asking some questions. These are questions that conveniently the reader would want to know. And it turns out that the alien creature that Superman's fighting, he sustains on human energies. As humans need air and food, so must I be surrounded by life to survive. So this creature kind of like is taking the life force of other beings. And the thing is that it's already been established that this creature can inhabit non-living things like buildings and spaceships. And apparently what's going on here is that this particular alien kind of likes this building. So it's kind of, in its way, kind of squatting in this building here. But the thing is that since Deimos plans to turn the building into sort of this AI fantasy, he's obviously going to evacuate all the people, because he said, listen, this building is going to be a self-serving machine. And because of this, the alien creature won't have any humans to subside on, because it's just going to be Deimos in there. And Superman asks, hey, there are other buildings you can squat in. And because apparently the alien creature, when they possess a building, they don't actually do any harm to the actual humans. They just kind of like suck off whatever energies they need. And because there's a lot of humans, it's not like one human is taking the entire load. But it turns out that, honestly, the alien actually has kind of an understandable motive. It says, I like the building. Yeah, I can go somewhere else, but I kind of like this building here. And don't I have rights as a squatter? So the thing is that apparently he kind of can take control and possession of Deimos, because it seems like the alien is sharing Deimos's body. So that's why sometimes Deimos shows up, sometimes the alien comes directly. So what's happening is that they're both in mid-flight, but the alien is depossessing Demos's body, leaving Demos at the mercy of gravity here. So he's going to kind of murk this guy. Demos is falling. Superman has to think what to do. Honestly, he really shouldn't. The answer should be obvious. Superman has to think about this. And he's coming up with a plan that he feels will defeat the alien and allow himself to save Demos. So he's betting Demos' life. And Superman was like, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And then Superman, he dive bombs into the Demos building. And he basically pancakes all these floors, and it kind of destroys the tower here, which he probably would not be able to do, actually, because columns are used to hold up buildings like this. The World Trade Center, those floors pancaked. That's because there were no columns holding up the floors. It was the steel frame on the outside. So anyway, nevertheless, the results are the same as what happened, and the building is smashed. But the thing is, Demos is still falling as this is going on. The crowd's noting that Superman was responsible for this property damage here. But nevertheless, he's concerned about Demos, and he catches Demos, and he brings him to the ground. And again, Superman's being a little quippy here, saying, "How you doing, Mr. Demos? This is the third time we met." But Demos is not in the mood for wisecracking. It turns out there's a shriek, the shriek that had been heard throughout the issue. It's very loud, and we see that the alien presence is kind of like this kind of ether cloud is leaving the building here. So basically, Superman handled this. He said, "Listen, you got a squatter. I'll take care of that squatter. Destroying the building, guaranteed to get that squatter out." So Superman's apologetic. So he says, "Hey, I'm sorry I had to demolish your building, but I had to do it. Don't expect any payment from me. You take these cheap words that I'm offering you rather than whatever settlement for this building." Demos is grateful. He recognizes that Superman had saved his life multiple times, and but Demos is focused on that interview because Demos has things to say and people need to hear it. And this is like way more important than him unpacking from this adventure. So Superman flies off. There's a mother with her teenage child, probably about 10 years old, saying, "Hey, you'll tell your grandchildren about what you saw, David." Like when Superman destroyed that building and you breathe in all that asbestos, and then 30 years later, you're in that hospital bed dying of lung cancer, and your children are surrounding you. Yeah, you'll remember Superman that day. So anyway, Superman he's back to being Clark Kent here, so we can call him Clark at this point. Demos is hyper focused on this interview here. So Clark is kind of handling the news equipment here, because once again, he's the entire crew, and Demos is making a big announcement. He's saying this guy's a billionaire. He's saying, "I'm not really cut out for business. Hey, I might have been a billionaire, but I don't really feel that business is my forte." And what he's going to do is he's going to donate his entire fortune to UNICEF, which would not have been a good idea because I remember there was a lot of corruption involved with UNICEF. So that might not have been a good idea, though they did help from time to time, because again, he wants to see other young men in impoverished situations get the opportunity he did. to go to college, to um, become very skilled at your profession, and then to immediately give it up. And he intends to live kind of simply. So he's just going to take a little salary for himself and just kind of like reflect on life and think about his philosophies on it. But as Demos Demos is saying this, it turns out that Clark wasn't recording any of that, and he finally has the microphone and recording set, everything set up. And then Demos is admonishing Clark for being kind of a clod and not knowing what he's doing with his work. That was the thing. That was one of the ways they tried to humanize Clark Kent. They kind of made him into kind of like this clumsy, kind of absent-minded fool at times. And that's the end of the story. Then we're told about upcoming Superman titles. Apparently in Action Comics, there's going to be the TV show that menaced Metropolis. And the human target will be the B story. Then they're talking about the next issue of Superman. You can expect that in April. And it's called The Man of Molten Steel. And they're introducing a new villain, Dr. Phoenix. And there's a B story about the world of Krypton. Apparently on Superman's world, when it's your birthday, they say unhappy birthday. So it's kind of weird. All right, so before I get to the B story, I'm going to talk about some of the letters. I think the first letter is very complimentary. That's how I remembered it as. He really liked the story, so he was really impressed. And he's kind of like, he's bringing up kind of like a conflict here with the DC universe involving the Fortress of Solitude, I think. Okay, so they're just saying, listen, thanks for the compliments, and you have a good eye for errors. The second letter, it is complimentary in terms of the story, but the person didn't like the dialogue, saying that Superman is being too much of a smart aleck, and but he likes the art, and he's talking about the private life of Clark Kent story, who is Mr. X. I think he kind of likes that story too. Oh, except he has a problem with the premise of Clark Kent being bored, saying that Clark Kent shouldn't be moping around his apartment saying, I don't got anything to do. I mean, I'm kind of bored here. Because the writer's saying that, hey, there's somebody out there who could use your help. So Superman should never be bored because there's someone out there who needs their help. Can you imagine, kid falls out of a building and he dies, unfortunately, and Superman was like, well, hey, I was bored at the time, maybe I could have helped that kid. They do explain that Superman at some point he does revert fully into Clark Kent, and he kind of tunes a lot of that out. And he admitted he would go crazy if he thought about it too much. The next one is talking about, it's kind of critical of the approach that Len Wein had taken. Again, Len Wein was kind of like a writer who was closer to the Marvel style. So he might have been kind of like forcing stuff here. So, but then he's talking about the Private Life of Clark Kent story. He says, I think he liked that one a little bit more. Yeah, so he made some nice analysis. and he doesn't like the wisecracks. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at the second story, The Private Life of Clark Kent. As I had mentioned before, Clark Kent is kind of a dick in this. As I mentioned, Elliot Maggin, kind of a dick in this. And the creative team is the same. Same way we see Clark Kent, he's kind of just living his life here. And there are two very attractive redheads here who notice him. And it turns out they're twins. I would kind of say they kind of have like a young Diane Lane look to them, if you remember her from like the mid '80s. And it turns out that one of the twins has a crush on Clark Kent. The other twin doesn't necessarily dislike him, but just feels that Clark is just kind of a dull, boring guy. And she says, "Come on, May. He has about as much appeal as a grapefruit." But May's like, "So I like grapefruits." So she's into some Clark here. So anyway, it turns out they're across the street from each other. So one of the twins, May, who likes Clark, he runs toward him, kind of like, "Can I have your autograph? Can I have some of your attention?" But then the other twin, who's standing on the sidewalk, she yells to May, "Hey, look out, run." But there's no reason for her to do that. However, we see a car immediately speeding into the street here. So May just barely missed getting hit by this speeding car. And Clark is there to kind of comfort her, with the one hand above the waist. Clark's worried. Hey, he doesn't want like any his rep getting damaged by inappropriate touching here. So it turns out that the speeding driver, it looks like it was just a complete accident, like he had lost control of the car. So it's not like this was a malicious act, because then fans would be asking, "Hey, why isn't Superman going after that driver?" So this because the car had stopped, Clark Kent doesn't really feel the need to become Superman here. Clark is noticing that that one of the girls, April, it's like April, May. So April had called out the warning to May about the car. Clark noticed this and kind of said, "Hey, how did you know that?" Because even I, with all my super senses, I didn't sense any danger coming. And April says, "Hey, she just knew. She just knew." Okay, we take a look at this one ad. It's for AFX, Aurora. I remember these. An older cousin had this, and they had the track. And the track had this kind of gun-like device. And the amount of times that you were able to kind of pull that trigger, that controlled how quickly your car went. And it was a strange setup. But this is a very well-drawn ad. So anyway, it turns out that both Clark and the twins here, they live in the same building. So this is how they know each other. They would kind of see each other in the lobby and in the hallways. This is probably where May got her crush on Superman. Clark Kent, I should say. But it's being explained by May that this is something that they've had for a long time, and that somehow they can sense what's going on with what's going on. It's kind of like they have a form of telepathy with each other, and a sense of danger. So they kind of have internal spider sense here. Clark is noting that identical twins have been known to develop telepathic behaviors, which is not true. If they would, they sort of develop something with each other. But that doesn't go to the outside world, as Elliot Maggin is trying to imply here. I guess it's similar if you watch The Sopranos with the two brothers, Patsy and Spoons, how they were identical twins. They were twins, fraternal, identical twins, because the same actor played both roles. And Spoons took a couple of slugs to the head, and it really screwed up Patsy for a while. So anyway, going back to the DC universe, the girls are telling Clark that they actually were experimented on or went through a series of experiments. No one actually touched them. With the university, that kind of gave them an idea of what abilities they had. And it turns out they don't necessarily have mind-reading abilities, or their abilities don't extend beyond the telepathy they have with each other, but they can sense danger. So if, like the experiment here, one is holding something and the other doesn't know what it is and say, use your powers to guess. She can't do it. But if there's something that's dangerous going to happen, they sort of have that premonition that, something bad's going to happen. So one of the things that happens here is that the professor, just before he was about to fall into the floorboards, because some of the boards had given out, the girls had warned him about that just before it happened. So this is sort of proof of the type of power they have. It's very specific. And one of the young ladies is saying that as they got older, their powers are sort of fading a little bit here. So they know this is something that's kind of aging itself out. Clark is entering his apartment here. He's noting that the girls seem very genuine about what they're saying. He doesn't doubt them at all. He's also thinking that he can kind of exploit them a little. Like, there's a TV show that he can put them on. It turns out that it's the boss's favorite show, even though it's last in the ratings. And there was something like that actually did happen. The owner of CBS, I think it was a guy called William Paisley, and he was sort of the guy who made the decisions on what shows were hacked and what shows were kept and so forth. He wasn't the only one, but he was the loudest voice in that room. And CBS executives wanted to cancel Gunsmoke. They're saying, listen, the show's underperforming and it's very expensive. But it turns out the wife of the chairman, William Paisley, she loved that show. And that show stayed on the air probably about 7 or so years longer than it should have, simply because the wife of the boss liked that show. Gilligan's Island, which was a top 5 show, was actually canceled so they could make room for Gunsmoke in the lineup. So this is sort of where this angle is coming from, because Clark knows that Morgan Edge really likes this kind of real people show that he has on, but it's low in the ratings, and Clark is thinking, hey, if I can boost the ratings of my boss's favorite show, that's going to go a long way with me in the office. So Clark is calling one of the TV producers, and he's saying, listen, I need you guys to take your camera equipment and your sound equipment and all that and go to Metropolis University. And so Clark is keeping it a little mum exactly as to why he needs this equipment, but nevertheless, this guy Josh, he has a lot of respect for Clark, and he's just going to follow orders. There's a little bit of awkwardness here, because it turns out that within the hour, it says, Clark is actually knocking at the girl's door. It turns out they live with either their mom or they live with their mom, who kind of looks like George Washington. And this grown man is saying, listen, I'm going to take your hot, underage, teenage girls who are wearing mini skirts, and I'm just going to borrow them for a couple hours, and then I'll bring them right back. But no, Clark is saying, listen, I want to interview them for this particular show, and I need you to sign a release. Of course, the twin that has a crush on Clark, she's very giddy and happy. The other twin who isn't impressed with Clark is saying that, now if you were Frank McGee, it might be exciting. Frank McGee was a well-known national newscaster. He had a very unexciting style. He definitely one of the guys who would put you to sleep. So that's kind of the in-joke there. So then we see the station here. So the girls are at the station. Their mom, George Washington, is there, probably signing the Declaration of Independence. But no, she's signing a release. So Clark really does not want to be accused of sexual harassment or, kind of an improper relationship here. He's making sure, hey, the mom is there, the twins are there. No, I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking pure thoughts. So anyway, Clark is, again, he's kind of being an opportunist here because he's only concerned about the ratings. Although he knows this is fun for the girls too. Not going to look at the ad. So anyway, it turns out that there's a whole production going on backstage. And apparently, I don't know if this guy's the host or it looks like he's the host of the show. He honestly looks like Ron Jeremy with thick glasses. And he definitely has that kind of comedian look, kind of like this dumpy guy with kind of like frizzy hair. And Clark's being kind of a dick here. So the host says, hey, you're Clark Kent, the TV star. And Clark is like, no, I'm the newscaster. So he's kind of making it clear. Listen, I'm not a movie star. I'm an actor. So he's kind of like making that distinction there. And it turns out that no, the guy Ruby, he's not the host. He's just one of the guests on the show. So he's kind of like a comedian. He's telling jokes here. Now this is where the dictum from Elliot Maggin comes in. So apparently there's kind of this production assistant for the show here, and he sees Clark and he says, Kent, your TV makeup looks like it was put on by a retarded monkey. Oh man, that is a dick description there. And I'm sure it probably was not that appropriate in 1973, although we did use that word a lot. So the comedian here, he's trying to I guess, kind of like make light of the situation, trying to tell a joke, saying, listen, what does a 2,000-pound canary say? Of course, the answer is, whatever it wants. Okay, so we're spared that. The show's about to start, and the two twins, they're being led to their chairs. Clark is going to be sitting in one of the other chairs to interview them. And we see that, the stage mom is kind of giving the girls a little advice, saying, remember where you are, girls. So the mom is making sure the twins aren't going to do any Girls Gone Wild stuff here. This is not Maury. This is not that episode of Maury. So you don't behave like that on this show. Okay, so the guy's telling jokes, and they're kind of waiting for the girls to be interviewed here. So then we kind of see the start of the interview with the twins. They're being interviewed because of their power of telepathy. Now it's odd because they can't actually demonstrate their powers in this interview. So these two are just going to sound like oddballs to the rest of the audience because they're just going to say all these things about what had happened to them, but without actually any video evidence of this, it's just going to sound weird to TV audiences. And so the show starts. This is not Clark's show, so it's hosted by another person here. And again, it's sort of like real people. And it turns out that the two twins and the professor who had tested the twins are there as guests, and they're going to, I think Clark is going to conduct the interview here. So they're going to turn over the show to Clark. We see that the television crew is actually on the balcony of the auditorium here, and that does play a role in the story. So the TV audience is on the lower part of the floor, and there is the balcony above them. And it turns out that Superman is hearing something because of his super hearing. So he's hearing something the others can't. And it turns out there's cracks in the balcony. So the structure of the balcony that is holding the structure up, it's cracking. And Clark sees this with his supervision here. And he figures that it's because of the heavy TV equipment here. Because there's a lot of lights, there's a lot of TV cameras here. Now, Clark initially thinks, listen, this would probably be a good opportunity for me to change into Superman and save these guys. However, in this next panel, Clark has different ideas. He says, no, not that Superman thing. Now, it turns out that the university has known that this structure needed to be maintained better, but they weren't doing it. And Clark is noting that there were problems with this structure when he was a student at Metropolis University, which doesn't make any sense because wasn't he like born and raised on a farm? So anyway, but nevertheless, Clark, he's holding that grudge. He's saying, damn it, the school administration, they should have done something about it back then. They didn't do anything about it now. So FAFO to you, Metropolis University. And Clark isn't entirely concerned about the lives that might be lost because if this balcony goes down, there's a whole bunch of people sitting in that crowd, that TV audience who are going to get smacked, along with the men on top. But you know what? Clark is like, listen, I got to make a point. FAFO, got to make that point. But he's also thinking, listen, if the twins here, they know of the danger, and if they give a warning, that will bail me out. So I morally, don't have to worry about a guilty conscience, because if the girls don't do their job, hey, it's not my fault. So yeah, so Clark is being a real dick here. He's gonna risk these lives just to make this point. But the girls don't seem to sense the danger. Now Clark might be misreading the situation, because this type of telepathy might only relate to them, or where they're around, because they did know the professor was in danger. And so it wouldn't be just them. They would be able to sense danger if other people were in danger. And the twins are talking. Clark's getting a little testy here. He's like saying, why are you two prattling along while there's a danger going on here? And Clark, he's bothered by this. He's not bothered enough to change into Superman, but he's bothering why these other people aren't going to bail him out. But then Clark sees the problem. He sees that for the most part, the audience looks like it's in the dark to them on the stage. So Clark is thinking that the girls might need to actually see what would be in danger for their powers to work. So then Clark, quote unquote, accidentally turns on the lights to the auditorium. And oh no, yeah, and he also turns off the TV lights. And because of this, the twins are able to see the balcony fairly clearly. And then they suddenly have one of their premonitions that there's going to be some type of danger. And they say specifically it's going to fall. The TV crew's kind of confused about this because remember, these are two underage girls who are giving this warning here. But nevertheless, they do hear the cracking. So the television crew that's on the balcony, they start to scurry. And the audience underneath, they start to scurry toward the stage. And then the balcony collapses. And but no one was hurt because everyone had enough warning to get out of the danger. The TV host, he thanks the two young ladies for kind of giving that warning. That guy, he wasn't going to get that warning from Superman. He wasn't going to get it from Superman. Clark was going to prove a point. And the girls, it looks like they feel that this is going to be their last telepathic demonstration. So either they feel that their powers have dissipated, or they're like, hey, there's no money in this, so we're not going to be superheroes. We're not going to help out anyone. This is all captured on television because it's being recorded. Morgan Edge is seeing this footage on his favorite show. He thinks it's great. It's gonna really improve the ratings here. Clark is pointing out to Morgan Edge that this is the university's fault, not Superman's for not being involved. This is the university's fault. They should have always fixed that. And if there are any lawsuits toward the university, I'll be happy to support them because I want to get even with those fucks. Turns out Morgan Edge saying, listen, I can donate some money to a new auditorium at Metropolis University. But, I'm going to have branding rights to it. He wants to call it the Morgan Edge Communication Center. Again, this comic's a little ahead of its time, kind of like a few of the things that we saw in Superman 78 were in here. And we saw Paulie's little robot protocol. Yeah, and Clark is pointing out that it would be heartwarming. That nothing stirs the heart other than a happy corporation. And that's the end of the story. I thought they were two fun stories. Very Silver Age, though. This is why DC had trouble competing with Marvel. So that's it. And that is my review of Superman, issue number 262. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.